Really excited about today because Jess and I have been speaking for a few months now. We've been kind of toying on, different ideas and what have you. And it's always nice to meet people who are in a very similar mindset and people who kind of share the same dreams and visions and what have you. So when we started doing these interview sessions a couple of weeks ago, they were super popular. And one of the people that I was really keen to get on board was Jess, because of the profile of what she's done, and her story is fantastic. And it's great to kind of hear her journey from being a PA and what have you. So thank you for coming on to have a chat with us. As usual, we'll have a nice, relaxed conversation, and and find out a little bit more about your background and what have you. So, welcome, Jess. Thank you for being a part of today.
Thank you for having me, and hi everyone. I can see some of our ambassadors, assistant room ambassadors, are on here, so no pressure.
Yeah, brilliant. So Jess, let's start now. It's quite well documented that you started your career as on the support staff side, and you started as a PA.
Yeah.
So if we can kind of go back all the way to the beginning, if we can. So you started working as a PA. So what was the kind of motivations behind that, and how did you get into becoming a secretary and PA?
Yeah, sure. So I will try and keep this as brief as possible. But I think, like lots of people in this profession, I actually just fell into it. And I know that some people don't like it when people say that they just fell into this as a career, but I really did. So my first role, I was actually working for my dad, which was a complete baptism of fire. I actually just started helping him on the side when I was about 17, whilst I was also at college. And that was a complete baptism of fire. As I said, I mean, my dad is ex-army. I think even when you're working with someone that you live with, the lines blur in terms of any kind of working relationship that you've got. And that ex-army mentality has always been something that I've grown up with my two younger sisters, and obviously my mum, and that's something that still is within him now. So it wasn't an easy job whatsoever at all. He didn't hold back on feedback, he didn't hold back on criticism. It was it was fun. I mean, I look back at it now, and I have the most amazing parents. They're very ambitious, they're very driven, and I feel really lucky now looking back on it, as someone who's now a business owner, and he runs his own business in commodities. I feel so lucky to have had that experience with my dad. But that's it. So I fell into it. I ended up working with him for 2 years. I ended up getting so sick and tired with him after 2 years. I decided to move on. And I started working in property. So I grew up in Essex. My first 2 roles working with dad and also working in property were in Essex. My second role was PA to a property manager. So it was quite a basic role. It was diary management, sending out mail merges, going on site visits with her. She looked after, I think, over 80,000 housing units in Norwich. So it was a lot to deal with in terms of the fact that she was the main point of contact for the people that lived in those properties. So that's where I really learned conflict resolution, especially when we're on site and someone's coming up to us and saying just little things like the pipes leaking in our house, or someone's parking in my car parking spot. So even though it was quite a basic role, it was very, very, very people orientated. So that was a really good experience for me. And after 2.5 years, I think it was, I decided to move up to London with my career. I was still living at home with my mum and dad. And for about 3 months, I was 22 at the time. And for about 3 months, I was interviewing and constantly getting rejected, purely on the basis that I didn't have any London experience. And that was really tough. At 22 years old, when you're coming up to London and you're raring to go and you've got all this enthusiasm, I mean, rejection at any time throughout your life is really hard to deal with, but I think that's just part of being a PA. Rejection develops your resilience, and resilience is a huge skill set that you, or part of your skill set that you need to have to be a successful PA or EA. And I look back at all of those times now when I was rejected from roles based on things that I couldn't actually control. You know, it wasn't that I couldn't do the job, it wasn't that they didn't want to hire me, it was just because I didn't have that city experience. And I see all of those, what I thought at the time were failures, as positives, because obviously you can't grow and learn unless you do fail, and failing's okay. And for me, failing all those other roles to get those other roles actually landed me my dream job, and landed me the best PA role I have ever had in my entire career. And it's the only job I would go back to doing if I was to ever be able to time travel backwards. So I started working for a company called Viapath.
And what do they do?
They are the UK's leading pathology provider. So if you go to the doctor and have any kind of test, if you're in hospital and have any kind of test, or, you know, if you end up in the morgue, as we all do one day, and something has to be tested, all of those samples go to the labs, obviously, to find out, you know, the results of those tests. And the company that I was working for, Viapath, they look after and manage all of the laboratories in St Thomas's Hospital, Guy's Hospital, Bedford Hospital and King's. So they are huge, absolutely huge. I've actually been speaking to a lot of the directors I used to work for recently, because they've been very instrumental in creating all of the COVID tests, for example, and processing all of that. So the reason why I say this job was the best job that I have ever had was because of the bosses that I had. So 6 months previous to me joining, they had a new CEO, and he sat down within his first week and sacked his entire board of directors. So what that meant for me is that I started the same day as the new COO, the new HR director, and the new commercial director, all who were people that I was supporting. We all started out on the same page. It was an absolute madhouse. There were, you know, things happened on the first day that you would never be able to anticipate. The Care Quality Commission announced a visit. I mean, they don't tell you they're going to come, and they can shut down hospitals in like half an hour. And that was something that we had to deal with on my first day. And it was just a whirlwind. But I predominantly supported the COO. We made an incredible team, an absolutely incredible team. I still keep in contact with him now. He might turn up sometimes at my front door unannounced with a bottle of red wine. He's just absolutely amazing. And I very much credit where I am now to how our relationship when I was working at Viapath really developed, because he was definitely a mentor to me, 100%. He needed a lot of support, but he was very much the kind of boss that wanted me to get involved in the operational side of the business as much as possible. So he was in charge of around about 80,000. Again, I feel like I have a bit of good luck with the number 80,000, but he had around about 80,000 staff that technically reported into him through a number of direct reports. And I very quickly acknowledged that there needed to be a very heavy presence from his PA to manage all of those direct reports and make people feel heard. Because as you know, running a business, a big part of that is making sure your employees feel valued and that they feel as though you're there for them. So that was an amazing job. I was able to get involved at a board level with lots of different decisions. He gave me a lot of responsibility in terms of managing the operations locally within the labs and within, you know, the individual teams that ran the infection sciences unit, the gene therapy unit. It was awesome. I absolutely loved it. And that's where I created my first internal PA network. And that's also where I took on my biggest events project that I have ever managed, which was a 750 person event at the Natural History Museum, which was amazing. I think we ran out of booze in the first hour and a half. So that was fun.
There's a plus and a minus to that.
It was just amazing though. I loved it so much. And if I could go back and do any job, I would work there again. And the only reason I left was because Rab, who was my COO, he actually left the business, and I tried staying after he left, and it just didn't work. I had that relationship with him that I kind of felt as though almost me staying, even though he'd gone somewhere else, it was weird. I felt like it was a bit of a conflict of interest.
I get that. I get that, and the nature of the role is always based around the closeness of the relationship and the trust that you build. Thinking back, do you think that if you had started, it sounds like you had a great relationship, but you started, as you say, you all started on the same day, so the kind of hierarchy was almost blown out of the water straight away, because everybody is there. It's new to everybody. So there isn't that kind of, oh, well, this is how we do things here. It's all like we kind of find our feet. Do you kind of attribute that to one of the main things that really kind of pushed the relationship closely quicker?
I actually think that even though there was no hierarchy when it came to the directors, there was hierarchy already existing within the business from the other PAs. So that was something actually that I had to deal with on my first day. You know, oh, these directors are brand new. It's your first job in London. This is how we do it here. You know, you're going to have to carry it on, because from the other EAs, this is how we know it works. And that's when I had to take control and really push back. And I think that's my first experience of ever really pushing back. And I took control of the situation. I sat them down and I said, the directors, and I said, you know, we're all new here, but you need to tell me exactly right now how you want this done, because I've also got, if I was speaking to one of them, I would say, you know, I've also got 2 other people who are brand new to this business, and I need to know exactly how you all work so that I can balance this properly, and so that I can manage expectations and I can do that successfully. I mean, I was so nervous. I spilt a whole cup of black coffee on my COO the first day I started. I was so nervous, but it worked really well. I just found that a really upfront, you know, approach to it was the best. And I was so nervous. I described myself as sometimes as a confident, insecure person, because you can be both. It just depends what mindset you adopt in terms of getting the job done. You know, you're there to make things go as smoothly, as efficiently, and as effectively as possible. So whatever you have to do to get that done, do it. You know, they're not going to hang around for mistakes to happen. And especially when I've got the Care Quality Commission there on my first day, I felt like it was a total, you know, whirlwind of craziness happening. But you just have to go with the flow as well, and just kind of take it as it comes. So yeah, I loved working there. I absolutely loved it. And I would never have left. Never have left. So
you know, I think you know, you look back at these things and you say, if the career path had kind of gone slightly different, then it would have affected where, you know, what you're doing now and what have you. So you know, these things always are, you know, without sounding too kind of airy fairy, but you know, these things happen for a reason, don't they? And I'm a kind of big believer in that. And you know, the fate side of things, you know, really plays a hand in it. So after that, would you, you know, without kind of knowing, you know, what your experiences were in the other environments that you worked in, would it be safe to say that you never kind of really replicated that, and you were always kind of searching for that a little bit more? Is that what happened? I
was really disappointed when in my roles after that I was unable to create that bond, because I think that your job as an EA or a PA or any kind of support can be as great or as terrible as your boss or your business. And I was very, very, very lucky to have somebody who he sort of took me under his wing. I mean, they all did. They all took me under their wing. And as I do describe them as people who really mentored me. But yeah, I think I was quite naive to expect so many people to have the same attitude, because you still have a lot of execs who just want their PA to come in and do the normal job, you know, do the 9 to 5, just do as they're told, you know, I've got this to-do list, crack on with it. And a lot of some execs don't particularly want their PAs or EAs to spread their wings that much.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big issue that actually contributes to how PAs feel very stuck in their role, and why PAs feel that they don't really get as much opportunity as they would like, because you need to have a boss who believes in you to really excel. I mean, I know, actually, it's not that I don't think, I know for a fact I would never have started my own business if I hadn't learned all of those things that I did do at such an early age. You know, how to make decisions, how to negotiate with board directors on business critical matters. You know, all of the things that I learned in that role and my future roles contributed to who I am today. But I do miss, and I did miss, having that relationship with an exec. I was very lucky, very lucky.
And did you work in recruitment for a little while? Did I see that? Or
So basically what happened is, after I left Viapath, I'll give you a quick whiz through. I joined another commodities business, and that was a gold mining company, and they were based between the UK and Macedonia, which was awesome. And at the same time of doing that, I look back and I think I was crazy. I was also the business manager for a fashion journalist, and her schedule was absolutely nuts. And I won't go too much into that, but I used to get up at 5 a.m, 5:30, I'd work for her for 2 hours, then go and do my day job, and then work after 6 until about 9 o'clock for her. And that was wonderful, but it was very full on, and that burnt me out within a year. And then my last role as a full-time PA was working for an ultra high net worth property buyer. Her clients would have £50 million to spend on a house in Knightsbridge. And that point, that's when I left being a full-time PA to start the assistant room. Now, after about a year of working completely by myself at my kitchen table, running the assistant room, I started losing the plot. I absolutely, my mental health was in a really bad situation. I describe myself as a bit of a junkie for human energy. I absolutely love it. I thrive off of it. So to go from a very busy office to being by myself in a silent house all day drove me crazy after about a year. So I then decided to take a part-time role, and I left that part-time role in December last year, working in financial recruitment, and that was working as a business manager / personal assistant to the execs, and that was only part-time. It was about 3 days a week, but it meant that I was able to sort of rebalance things, and I was able to still have a bit of time away from the assistant room, which I think I really needed, and also be around a group of people that really kind of helped me get my mojo back in a way.
That makes perfect sense. So the assistant room, that started in 2016, is that right?
Yes, very early 2016. I set the business up in February 2016.
Brilliant. So what was the motivation and the kind of the thought process behind thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna use my experience as a PA, and then I'm going to go off and try this. What was the kind of motivations and reason behind it all?
Ultimately, it came down to in 2016, it came down to the fact that I just felt as though I wasn't represented as an individual by the existing networks at the time. Now, that didn't mean at all that they weren't doing a good job. It doesn't mean that what they were doing was poor. It just means that I couldn't relate to that group of people. If anyone here has ever met me, you will know that I bang on and on and on and on and on about the fact that I think an EAPA role now is a lifestyle choice, purely due to the variety of things that you are required to fulfill from your boss, and due to just the sort of the difference in things that you need to do at the different times, and how moldable you need to make yourself to the exec that you work for. So I mean, I would be one day organising a board meeting, and the next meeting, the next thing I'd be doing is buying £10,000 worth of silk knickers in a lingerie shop on Bond Street. So the corporate sort of view on being a PA and EA, which is at the time what most of the networks really concentrated on, just didn't, I couldn't fit in with that. And I knew from networking throughout my career that there were a lot of people that felt the same.
Yeah.
So I actually had this, I can't really describe it in any other way as just a very obscure feeling that I wanted to do something back when I was working in property, in my second role, that I wanted to do something alongside my PA job, but I just didn't really know what that was. And everyone around me was starting their own sorts of little businesses. I mean, I worked with somebody who made the best cupcakes and she sold the most amazing cupcakes, or there was a guy down the road whose wife were making preserves and little things like that. So even though I had this feeling, there were times when I thought, you know, I'm going to look at all these people around me and, oh my God, maybe that's, you know, maybe that's what I should do, or maybe that's the idea that I'm supposed to pursue. And I'm so glad that I didn't force it, because otherwise I would never have started the assistant room. You know, I had that feeling that I wanted to do something when I was 21. I left it alone. And when I was finally in my last PA role, thinking I'm not happy, I'm not working for somebody who I really get on very well with, I don't feel as though the business really appreciates me, that's when I had my light bulb moment, thinking there's this problem that I've identified where I'm, you know, in this sort of black hole of people with other people, you know, that's missed out with, you know, having a bit more of a fresh take towards the PA industry from a network. And I looked back at my time when I was working for the fashion journalist, and I thought she had this amazing, colourful, beautiful website. She was really engaged. She had a really fresh perspective on the fashion industry. And all of that just came together in one go. And that's how the assistant room was born, really.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
It's a really interesting story. And having have been the type of person who literally has, you know, we've spoken a lot about different ideas of, you know, different things. I'm the type of person that will have ideas after ideas after ideas, and you have to have that passion behind the scenes
100%.
for something, because if you, as you say, what I liked about what you just said is that you're so glad that you didn't force it, because if you'd have picked something that, you know, you think, oh, okay, well, I can make money out of that, and just kind of just purely gone down that road, it becomes a bit of a different beast, doesn't it? And if you 100%. If you haven't got that burning passion, you're not going to kind of put yourselves in the position that you have to, as a business owner, to make it 100% success. And so, you know, I'm sure you know the lengths that you have to go to make the it's not easy, you know.
It's not easy, especially when you run, and you'll totally get this, but especially when you run a very people-centric business, there aren't many things in the world that you can control, but you 100% cannot control people. You can't control their emotions, you can't control how they're going to react to things. You know, I can be working on something for 6 months and I don't actually know how that's going to be received until launch day, and it could completely flop, and I have to take that risk leading up to that time, thinking, yes, this is the right thing to do, I'm going to put all this resources, time, money into it, but you just have to believe in yourself. I mean, I think the thing that I've learned the most throughout running the assistant room, and it's a continuous learning process, but to be successful at anything, and this applies to everyone, you have to be authentic. You know, if whatever you're doing doesn't come from an honest place, you're going to find it very, very, very difficult to maintain the energy that it takes to achieve the goals that you've got. And that's why I am so pleased that I didn't pursue or force that feeling, because otherwise I could be right now on my 10th business. I would not have started the assistant room, and I could have failed over and over and over and over and over again, but I waited. I let that sort of idea come to me more organically, and I'm so grateful that I did that. I think that's one of the I'm really grateful I had that lesson very early on in life. You know, sometimes the best thing you can do is take a step back, and you might not realize that at the time, but you will thank yourself in the long term, you know, in terms of what that's going to mean for you. So I agree.
No, I love that. So let's kind of rewind to the start of the assistant room. So how did you kind of not how did you set it up, but what were the kind of early steps that you did? did you have a network to kind of fall back on already? Or because
Yeah.
you mentioned that there was some PA networks within Biopath and what have you. Did you build that up already and then said, I'm going to do some events and see where it takes us? Or was that the kind of original plan? Or was it more of a kind of all-encompassing thing?
It was actually a bit of a slapdash situation, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would like to say I had absolutely no idea it would turn into what it is today.
Yeah.
I came up with the name in 5 minutes. I hated the name. I absolutely hated it. I ummed and ahed on changing it for at least the first 8 to 9 months.
Yeah.
But I came up with the name.
Now, though?
I like the name now.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah,
good.
I like the name now. I came up with the name in 5 minutes. My ex-boyfriend at the time, he was a graphic designer. He designed the logo in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't really something that I ever experienced or ever expected to become what it is today. So it was like I spent hours and hours and hours and hours thinking about it. I wanted to have a blog. I have always found writing very cathartic. So to be able to create something where I could kind of get out all of my frustration from my boss in a really constructive way and be creative, because I have always grown up in a very creative environment. I was always a straight A student at school when it came to art, graphics, creative writing, English literature, English language. So for me, it was just kind of doing something that I really enjoyed. And that's all it was. It was like a little hobby to me. And then what happened is one day in my career as an EA, there was just something that happened. I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to be in this sort of situation. I wrote my notice and I handed it in on the spot. And I think I'm a very impulsive person. I've learned to really control that a little bit more, but back then I was very, very, very impulsive. So exactly how I handed my notice in, I just started the company, and I had absolutely no idea that it would get any interest. I didn't really care if it had any interest. But within the first, I think, 6 months, we ended up having around about 800 people unique users come to the site every month. At the time, for me, I was like, oh my God, I've hit the big time. Like, I've got 800 people from around the world who were just reading my blogs. They weren't really on anything other than a couple of restaurant reviews and doing some writing on how to push back on your boss and things like that. And it just took off. It completely, within 6, 7, 8 months, it went from being my little hobby and being my personal thing to being something that people around the world logged into. And so that's when I looked at my black book. And I did have a network. Sorry, to answer your question before, I did have a network before I started the assistant room, because I'd networked for so long. So I have 6 address books and phone number books that I've still got stashed away somewhere with everybody's details in. And because I had all of these contacts, and because I'd been a PA and I'd really got stuck into the idea of negotiating special prices with hotels and getting to know the front of house teams at all of the most beautiful restaurants around London, I contacted them and I said, I can tell you exactly who, for example, in Mayfair has got a private dining event that they want to book in the next 2 weeks. So we should do a dinner. Or I know who out of all of the PAs in the city who has a budget over £50,000 for client entertaining every month. So why don't we get them for lunch? And it turned into a real snowball effect. So it went from a blog to a business that had online resources to running beautiful events at restaurants and hotels in London. We still do them all the time. You know, you don't have to pay to come to them as a PA or an EA. You just have to qualify to meet a certain number of criteria that is going to benefit the person who's hosting that event. Which is awesome. They're so much fun. They get quite wild, to be honest. So it went from that, and then we've just slowly grown from there, really.
That's fantastic. And it's great to see that, you know, to hear when you say about the kind of impulsiveness of it, and kind of, you know, I'm going to hand my notice in and then boom, off and running. And I think especially nowadays there is always a lot of overthinking that goes into things, and you know, I'm as guilty of it as the next person. I think that we all are at times, aren't we? So it's nice to kind of see that you just kind of went for it, and off you go, and here we are. Just to everyone listening, I know that Jess is very happy to answer some questions. Oh, look at this. That's good timing. Jess is happy to answer some questions on any kind of topic and what have you. So please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll come back to them at the end of our conversation. So just bear that in mind. From the events that you've done, because you do lots of dinners, you do lots of conferences and what have you, just give us, for those people who are kind of logged in that are new to the assistant room, what are kind of big things and big events that you've had, that have been a big success for you?
Sure. Okay, so when carrying on with the impulsiveness that I used to and still do have within me, when we started in 2016, I obviously had a business plan, and that business plan included a number of things, including us, the membership that we've got going, the events that we do, and all of the other things that we contribute towards. But the big thing that I did in 2017, the first big event I ever did, was we had a learning and development conference. And the thing is that because I've always described the assistant room as a lifestyle platform, and PA and EA roles as lifestyle choices, the assistant room is the furthest thing you will ever find from corporate, the furthest thing. So the first event that I ever did, we were in a beautiful, beautiful venue. We had panels of CEOs sat at the front of the room. We had nutritionists come along. We had virtual GPs there to kind of talk to people and speak to people about their health. We had beauty bars. We had all sorts of different things. And it was a really nice mix between learning from people who had specific experiences in certain areas, also who were PAs and EAs, as well as CEOs. But then we also had the more casual sort of enjoyment sort of thing, and it was so wonderful. We had a bit more of a structured day during the day, and then in the evening we had a huge party, and it was absolutely fantastic. We had an amazing DJ, we had an amazing photographer, we had a photo booth. It was awesome. That was probably my first real big event that I ever did. And then what's happened since then is we have just slowly evolved. So we hold now 5 evening events per year called the Assistant Room Live. Unfortunately this year, obviously, we're having to take them online. Our next one coming up is in July, and that's all about love and self-confidence. And yesterday I just announced that we were going to be donating 10% of all the profits from that event to the George Floyd Fund. So that's something I'm really proud of, that we can help to support. And then we also have lots of our casual events, our events at private dining rooms around London. We have all of our networking events that what have we done before? We've had bottomless brunch at the weekend, and I've taken people up and down the Thames on a speedboat, because that promotes team building. Of course it does. You can do that with your team. Or we go all the way up to groups of about 150 people at cocktails and canapes. So there's tons and tons and tons of stuff that you can get involved in from an event side, and I think that's super important, because in my opinion you learn more sitting across the dinner table with a PA or an EA who's got a certain experience in something than sitting in a classroom listening to somebody who doesn't have that first-hand experience talking to you about how you can change or do something different. And it's not to say that you don't learn anything from those people, but having the more casual approach is definitely how I felt that I was able to learn and kind of grow when I was a PA. So
wicked. It's amazing. And you mentioned, I know that I know all about the kind of program of events that you have on, and the huge changes that you've had to kind of put in place. Apart from the obvious, what's the kind of the schedule for the end of the year? Have you been able to plan, say, past September for live events, October? Or what are you kind of hearing on, whether that actually might happen this year? Is that something that's still in the pipeline, live bits? Is that?
I think, to be honest, I made the decision over the weekend to put all of our assistant room live events online. Now, as I said earlier, obviously I'm a bit of an energy junkie. So to me, that was a huge, huge, huge deal. I mean, we plan all of these events, or I plan all of these events more than a year in advance. You know, I sorted our speakers and people who are organising the logistics of all of our events this year in January last year. So when COVID hits, that was the first thing that immediately jumped to mind. You know, I've got to change these. And it was heartbreaking because we always get people in a beautiful venue in London, you know, not a hotel, no park plazas, anything like that. Our first event, for example, was supposed to be at Shoreditch Treehouse. And what I really love doing as a true Essex girl is getting everybody together with a glass of wine in their hand and having a lot of fun. And if you've ever been to any of our events before, they do get fun, like fun. Everybody ends up having a really, really good time, and people end up sometimes rolling out of the door. It's always a great evening. But yeah, so we had to change them over. I'm not going to be putting them back online, back in person this year. They're all going to be online. What I'm hoping is our normal events, or the events that we run for our members, will be the events that we can do in person again. Because I was speaking to a couple of people who run other networks the other day, and I was also watching a really, really good live event from Lucy Brazier on Facebook, and she was interviewing a really successful conference planner, and she was saying, you know, you need to have a venue for 24 guests now needs to be the size of a venue that can hold 124 guests. And from a business perspective, it just doesn't work. I can't hire a venue for 150 people just to have 20 people in the room. So we're taking it online. We have got a overwhelmingly positive response.
Yeah, I was just about to ask actually what the, you know, has it been, what's been the backlash? That's the wrong word to use, but you know, has it been received, you know, positive or negative? But
if both. I think people are disappointed that they can't obviously meet up right now, but I think that's just a general consensus. But it means that these events, so last year at the PA Diaries, that's what we used to call it, the PA Diaries Live, we now call it the Assistant Room Live, but last year at the PA Diaries we had a live audience, and then we recorded all of the sessions as well, and then circulated that to people who were unable to join us in person. So to be able to offer those sessions now live has actually really, I mean, it's been extremely well received with people around the world. You know, the Assistant Room is now nearly 20,000 people strong. We have networks all over the world. So for me to be able to include everybody without me having to fly to Australia or to fly to Dubai or to Italy or wherever it is, and to still be able to include everyone is actually amazing. And it's made me really think about going forward how I want these events to look like, and whether or not we ever want to do them in person again. Because it's just, I mean, it's quite stressful for me. I'd never used Zoom until the other day properly, when we did our first event, and I actually left feeling very deflated after it, even though it was a really successful event, because I didn't have that automatic validation from everybody that they'd had a great time. And it was really tough.
Yeah, and that makes, I understand that actually. I get that. I think I've become, like personally, I've become a bit desensitized from it because I've been doing so many of these Zoom things now. It's become kind of like second nature. But it's interesting to what you say. When you're at an event, you've got people, hey, this is amazing, or if there's an issue, you know, people voice it there and then, don't they? So I've got some questions that I always wrap up with at the end. But what I did want to ask you about is, I know that one of your kind of biggest passions and one of the biggest drivers that we've often spoken about is the passion for learning and development, and your kind of, you know, your thought process behind that people in our industry. I say our industry, I'm not a PA myself, but I've served the industry for like 20 plus years, so I kind of call it that. You feel very strongly about the learning and development piece, don't you?
100%. I think the thing that we need to change as an industry is that the conversation that we are having as to why learning and development isn't as accessible for PAs, that conversation we're having now is the conversation that we were having when I first started being a PA, you know, over 12 years ago. And that needs to change. You know, I think when I hear people say, you know, it's a real shame that PAs don't get those opportunities. It's a real shame that when they do get given that opportunity, they have to take a day of annual leave. That's an old conversation. To be honest, I switch off when I hear that. It doesn't mean that it's not true, but what it means is that you can't get anywhere just by moaning about something. You have to do something about it. Now, I think it's a mindset thing. I think firstly, PAs and EAs need to recognise that they are not the only people who do not get given that opportunity in the organisations they work in. And that's really, I mean, that might sound really harsh, but it's true. You know, business is all about money. You go to work to earn money. If you didn't earn money, you wouldn't go to work. You would stay at home all day. And in the same way that a business has to sign off, you know, a purchase of a new bit of equipment, or in the same way that someone in the finance team can get the opportunity to go and have a learning and development opportunity, there has to be a business case put forward as to why the company should justify any costs outside of their existing budget to support that. So I think that's the first thing we need to do. We need to change our mindset. You know, we're not the only people that are in this black hole of, I don't want to call it neglect, but it is, to some people, that is how it feels. So I would say, let's shift the mindset. Let's stop talking about how we're all hard done by, and let's do something about it. You know, we've figured out there's a problem. Let's create a solution to that. So what we do at the Assistant Room is, for all of our learning and development series, we have created a business case letter for PAs and EAs to actually take to their boss, because it is a difficult thing to ask for. You don't necessarily know what the answer is going to be. And talking from personal experience, when I've asked one employer if I can, you know, take the day off to go and, you know, do some learning, and they said no to me, and this was when I was 21 years old. And it's not that I never asked them again. I didn't ask any execs ever again, because I just had that thought inside me that they're going to say no, there's no point asking. Like, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't put a business case letter forward, or, you know, to justify why you want to go, you're never going to get anywhere. So I think it's about changing the mindset. It's about making PAs and EAs feel confident enough and get them armed with the tools that they need to take that to their boss. And it is so important to really focus on your own learning and development, not necessarily just in your professional life, but for your personal life as well. You know, things are happening so quickly. You know, there are lots of online free resources that you can take advantage of if it's not something you can get support from with your boss. But it is something everybody should be asking for. And it goes back as well, I think, to the interview process. You know, there's that question that all people in interviews get asked: have you got any questions for me? How do you support my learning and development? How are you going to support me growing in my role? You know, it needs to change to that as well. There needs to be accountability held within our industry to take charge of that, and then to really commit and do your research with regards to what works best for you, what organisation is offering something that you are going to find really valuable, and then for you to commit to that and see it through. But we have people, you know, from around the world who join us at our events, and some of them need a little bit of coaching about how they can ask for things and how they can approach their exec. And I'm always on the phone, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 times a week, coaching people through that. And it's something that I actually go into businesses and talk about as well. You know, why, like, I sit down in front of board members and I hold them accountable. Why are you not offering your PAs and EAs these opportunities? And they, most of the time, it's because they haven't even thought about it. So yeah, I'm really passionate about it. It needs to be something everyone gets on board with. If you don't ask, you don't get.
I totally agree. And it's nice to have somebody kind of putting themselves out there to be the ambassador for that. And I think maybe, just maybe, given, you know, the situation we're in isn't a great situation, isn't it? Is it? But one of the big positives that have coming out of this is that there is a kind of shift in people's mindsets to kind of go seeking out different means of ways of learning and how to be inspired and what have you. And we've seen that ourselves with what we've been doing with the kind of business support network. We've seen kind of raft of people jump on board and enjoy learning about stuff and feeling inspired. So hopefully that's kind of one of the big positives that's comes from this. So what does the future hold for you and the assistant room at this point?
Well, I mean, there's always tons going on. I could probably talk for hours, but I'll give you a sort of bullet point overview about what's happening over the next 6 months. Firstly, we've just appointed our 2020 ambassadors for the next year. And they are all amazing ladies, absolutely amazing. I was very disappointed I didn't get any guys apply. So if any guys are watching here, please let me know, because I still have a couple of spaces for ambassadors and I would love to have a really diverse group. But we have 8 amazing ambassadors who have just come on board. And weirdly, something that we all spoke about on the phone together, the assistant room is the only network that offers an ambassador program.
Really?
So equally so. If there's anybody here who watches or who runs a network, just from my personal experience, it's been an amazing experience to be part of as a leader and a founder of a network, and I would highly recommend that everybody get on board with it. So
you know what, it's so funny. So sorry to
that's okay.
It's so funny because I was thinking about how my tiny network compared to yours has grown in a very, very tiny space of time. And one of the ideas that I've had is that there's certain people that have really followed us, and and the popularity is down to these types of people. And I was actually sitting there thinking, do you know what? I'm going to reach out to these people and say, how do you fancy being an ambassador? And then a day later, I saw the assistant room's ambassador thing come up. So it really made me chuckle.
It's a really lovely thing to be involved in. I mean, we put an advert out. I mean, we've closed the ambassador applications now for this year, but we had over 650 people apply to be ambassadors. And for me, it's, running a people-centric business, the assistant room will never work if I make it about me. This is not about me. This is about people in the network everywhere around the world. It doesn't matter if you're a team assistant and you've just started, or if you're an EA at the royal household. What I do exists because I wish I had this resource when I was a PA. So to be able to create a group of people who I can dedicate just a little bit of extra time to in exchange for their ongoing support is absolutely amazing. So that's really good. So we've got our ambassadors. Obviously we've got the assistant room live going on for the rest of this year. We've got self-confidence and self-love and confidence on July 14th. And that's going to be amazing. We've got 3 incredible powerhouse speakers. 2 of them are TED talkers. And as I said, 10% of the profits from that event are going to the George Floyd Fund. So we've got a really big interest for that from around the world. And I'm just really happy to be able to support something that's not relevant just now, but it should be relevant all the time. It shouldn't have to take, what happened to him for us to stand up against humans acting inhumane. So I'm really proud to say that we can help in a really, really tiny way, or try and help. We've got our membership. Our membership opens 4 times a year. That was something, actually, because of COVID-19, I've been able to dedicate a little bit more time to, because it was something that was in our business case, or in my business case, in 2017. And I just had never had a lot of time to really figure it out. So I've spent the past year doing that properly. So we've got the membership, and we have our podcast. I'm devastated we can't do our podcast recordings in person, because I absolutely love doing them. So we're going to wait until COVID's over to continue that schedule. But it's a wonderful resource if anybody needs a bit of a kick up the butt, or just to hear a couple of different inspiring stories from people. We don't focus as much on who the PA is in terms of their responsibility. We focus on a unique story that they've got, and what they can bring to the table. So it's awesome. But yeah, there's tons and tons of stuff going on. My to-do list for this week is 5 A4 pages long. So there's a lot going on, but yeah, we've got our ambassadors, we've got our events, podcast, membership. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff.
Good for you. And it's lovely to hear positivity. It's lovely to hear like people are kind of making a real kind of positive impact on, you know, on what's going on. So it's fantastic. So my last question, and I always like to kind of finish on these two, is looking back through your career and all the bits and pieces that you've done, the risks that you've taken, the things that you've learned. What's the kind of the biggest piece of advice that you could offer the kind of audience based on your own experiences?
Firstly, I think the way that people need to approach advice is you need different advice from different people depending on what you need advice on. I know that sounds very, very complicated, but in the same way, I have 4 different mentors, and those different mentors help me on different things. So I think to be able to have a piece of advice that is really relatable, you need to be able to go to somebody who can help you in that specific area. And that's something that I've really learned in my journey. But if I was to give a piece of blanket advice that hopefully would appeal to everybody, is believe in yourself. You know, I could never, ever have done the assistant room, created my own business. You know, we're global. We've got readers in over 25 different countries. We've got nearly 20,000 people in the network. You know, the podcast that I changed from a written campaign to an audio campaign scared the living daylights out of me, but we've been in the new and noteworthy section on iTunes twice. I could never have done all of these things unless I was a PA, and I was that PA in an organization whose boss told me, you know, I was never really going to do anything other than be a PA. I was only ever going to earn a certain amount of money. I was only going to be able to take a certain amount of holiday a year. And I just took that and I thought, that doesn't work for me anymore. So I'm just going to see what happens. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to put myself before money, you know, my happiness before money, before, I know that it's scary, but before the security of knowing what I've got coming up in the next 6 months, I put my happiness above all of that. You know, I left the equivalent of a 6-figure package in my last PA role, and I left that and started the assistant room and lived on poached eggs on toast for an entire year. I think my weekly food shop was £6.30. So I literally just threw everything away, and it was the best thing I ever did. So I think believe in yourself. You know, don't let anyone tell you can't do anything. Don't let anybody tell you that, you know, you've hit the glass ceiling and that's it. I'm always that person who wants more, wants to do better, and wants to try new things. And everybody can be the same. If you have a dream, go for it, and do so unapologetically, because if you don't do something that makes you happy, ultimately you are the only person that is going to affect. No one else.
Love it. What a way to finish.
So I kind of started doing this and like gesticulating a lot, and so I get really into it. Good.
Do you mind if we use a couple of those sound bites in our next video?
Go for it. Yeah.
As you were saying it, I was thinking, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this bit. No, that was fantastic. So if anyone has got any questions, that'd be great. You know, just kind of jump in the chat box. As I always say to people, if anyone wants to kind of come off mute as well, that's always that was always been really nice. Looking through the comments in the chat, I've had quite a few private messages, which is great, saying about how inspiring your story is and how great it is to hear how you formed the assistant room.
as I said, this isn't, however much this is a business that I'm really proud of creating, it's not about me. And I think that's the really important thing I want to make everyone know. You know, it's so important to have a community. And this is something I wished I'd had when I was a PA. And there are lots of different networks that suit different people. And it just depends where you see yourself. But yeah, it's just about building a global community, making everybody recognize that there is support out there. You know, we're not just a support to our bosses, but we're also a support to each other. And that's what my job is. I'm here to facilitate that and to help you guys as much as possible. I don't know if you could see it, Paul, but Valeria, who I know, she joined our last online event. She's in Russia. She said to me, "Hi Jess, how do you think it's possible to find a job as a PA EA in London as a foreigner? For example, here in my city, I have a lot of contacts. I can solve any problem. And I know that execs searching not only great skills, etc., but searching for a person with excellent address book and communications." Yeah. I mean, I would say it all comes down to the recruiter that you have and how good that recruiter is. Like, you know, Paul, you have to be able to represent your candidates properly to place them properly. So I think in my experience, I mean, I've had awful experiences with some recruiters when I was younger. I think everybody has, but equally so I've had amazing experiences, and it's just about finding the right person.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I would, what I would say to that individual, that message I think has come to you privately. I haven't seen that come up. From a recruitment perspective, I would definitely say, you know, being a foreigner would have no kind of vary on it. You know, in London, it is very much. A lot of people think, oh well, there are bias towards people who are perhaps younger and what have you in the recruitment sector in the EA world. But I can categorically say that doesn't necessarily happen. I think actually, if you can prove that you've got other strings to your bow, like foreign languages and bits and pieces like that, that's actually going to be an advantage in some particular jobs. Yes, I would say about definitely pushing and making sure that you find the right recruiter. But I do quite a few talks and speeches and what have you. And one of the things that I say in my top recruitment tips for EAs is that I always encourage EAs to make a list of companies that they would love to go and work for, and then contact them directly. As crazy as that sounds from a recruitment consultant, because a lot of people kind of think, wow, what's he saying there? But that does have a big impact, as well as finding great recruiters as well. So somebody, that's no problem, Valeria. Somebody has asked, how do you think COVID and its economic impact will impact on the EA role? Any thoughts on that, Jess?
I mean, obviously the things like travel, the way that, you know, office configurations are, all of that is going to change. I think there will be more change to an office management position than there is to an EA role. I actually think we are going to really come out of this better than we were before. And I know that there are a lot of people right now who are really struggling with the idea of, you know, what's going to happen after furlough, or what's going to happen when I go back to the office. Am I still going to have a role? You know, if all of my directors are leaving, what does that mean for me? And it is really, I mean, it's uncertain at the minute. There is no guarantee about what it is going to look like, but the things we have all been craving for so long, flexible working hours, the ability to work from home, you know, all of these things before COVID-19 could have taken years to get sign off on. And also I found in my experience, a lot of my directors just wanted to literally have a visual of me sitting down the hallway to feel reassured that they had that support there. So there's definitely going to be changes that happen. I don't think there's any way any of us can say exactly what that's going to look like, but I don't feel as though there's going to be any long-term risk to our industry. If we can survive changes in technology, we can definitely survive COVID-19. And I think it just, it just means that everybody's got to really make a bit more of a conscious effort to start communicating a little bit more, to develop those, or learn how to develop skills in terms of how to build relationships virtually, and just roll with the punches. There's no real way of knowing what it's going to look like, and it might be scary, but you've just got to go with it.
Definitely. I think if I can just add like my 2 pennies worth into that one, just a kind of direct answer to Joe, if you like. Since March 15th or whatever date it was that everything kind of really shut down, this question has come up over and over and over and over again with the EA community, and that's a large percentage of the people that I speak to on a daily basis. And what I've actually put together is I've put together a panel which we are doing a webinar next Thursday, which includes Lucy Brazier, which everybody will know who she is, one of the secretarial managers at PwC, another high profile PA. We've got 5 people on the panel, all with different backgrounds and different opinions, and we're just going to discuss what things are going to be changing, how people can best prepare for that, and have different opinions and what have you. So that's happening next Thursday, basically, if anybody is interested in that, essentially. So Valerie is saying thank you. If anybody else has got a question, speak now. But in the meantime, Jess, is fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great. Absolutely loved it. Have you enjoyed it?
I have absolutely loved it. I think this is the first time that I've really, really enjoyed speaking to somebody and just having a really nice casual chat about everything. Most of the time when I'm at events and I get up and present to groups of people, I have this weird thing, I just sort of black out and I go on to autopilot and I just talk and talk and talk and talk, and then afterwards I'm thinking, what did I actually say? So yeah, this has been the most enjoyable one that I've done so far. So thank you for having me. And if anybody here wants to get in touch with me, I'm always up for a chat. Or, oh, Sarah's put, what do I do for fun? I drink a lot of wine. That's what I do for fun. No, I've always been really into horse riding. So luckily when I go back home, we have the horses. I do drink a lot of wine, and I get very creative as well. So I love cooking. I make ceramics, which is weird. No one really knows that. And I also do a lot of reading. So yeah, I suppose all those things are things I can do in COVID-19. If you were to ask me out of COVID-19 what I do for fun, it would probably be going to bottomless brunch every Saturday. But yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, that's great. And obviously, if for those people who are not kind of members for the assistant room, definitely go and check it out. As we've heard, it's an amazing resource. And for those of you who are perhaps new to the stuff that I'm doing, come and check us out, the Business Support Network. Jess and I have kind of got the same mindset on things, and you know, it's really nice to collaborate with like-minded people that you know, that we can spread the same message to as many people as possible. Good stuff. So look, thanks so much for your time, Jess, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks guys, and I hope everyone's okay and social distancing and all those things, but it's been really lovely to speak to you all, and thanks Paul, it's been really fun.
Pleasure, great to have you on board.
Lovely, speak to you soon.
Cheers.